Oh no, the other house across the street, I think, just caught fire.
Wildfires, we don't know when or where they'll strike, but one thing we do know, when they hit, they can leave behind a wake of destroyed homes and devastated lives. So how do we better protect ourselves and our homes? Fox 11 News In Depth starts right now. Hello everyone, I'm Hal Eisner. I've been covering fires here in Southern California for several decades now. I've seen it all. Lives lost, entire neighborhoods burned to the ground. Today, we'll look at what we can all do to harden our homes to lower the chance of becoming fire victims.
These are pieces of people's lives. We pray, of course, that they got out safely.
It's what many people fear the most. Even if they get out safely, they worry their homes will go up in flames.
We never would have thought we'd come home to this.
You know, we really believed that it was going to be okay, and this is incredibly hard to look at.
I was on the fire lines when I came across someone you probably recognize. Martin Sheen was forced to evacuate his home when the Woolsey fire ravaged Malibu.
There's little chance that our house survived.
You're worried you lost it?
Oh yeah, probably so. But we haven't lost any lives, so we got that.
It turns out Sheen didn't lose his home, but so many have, including retired Ventura County Assistant Chief Andy Ortega. He was out helping fight the Thomas fire, saving other homes, when he found out the fire was busy taking his. I want you to look back at this monitor, and what we want to look at is your home. This is what you lost.
Yeah.
And I know it's a powerful and difficult image to look at, especially for somebody who spent their entire life fighting fires. What goes through your mind?
Well, that was the first. Well, I didn't expect to have any emotion because it's been 5 months, almost 6 months from now. But just looking at that, those were actually the first footsteps as we walked up our steps to get into our house. And I snapped that picture, but prior to that, I just told my wife, I said, brace yourself, it's not going to be pretty. And I was already notified by the chief that my house had been burnt down and we lost it.
That was a year ago. Since then, Andy Ortega's church has stepped in to help him rebuild their home. I'm joined now by 3 fire captains, Tony and Brenda of LA County Fire, Steve Kaufman of Ventura County, and Lucas Spellman of Cal Fire. You know, I want to start with you about Andy, because you work with Andy, and that's so hard. That's so hard. You get people out of their homes, you get them to safety, and they're biting their nails over whether they're going to lose their home, and then they come back, and like Andy, his home was gone.
Yeah, it is hard for all of our firefighters all across the state, not just Andy, but some of our Ventura County firefighters, some of our Cal Fire firefighters, firefighters all over the state have been victims of the wildfires, just like the general public. And a lot of times they're actually fighting the fire when their houses succumb to the fire. So it's a real emotion that we feel when we're out there protecting people's homes. But probably the most important thing is that we treat other people's homes like we would treat our own. So when we're out there protecting, it's in good hands.
One of the things we've talked about before, Captain, is the idea that people who don't want to leave their homes sometimes put their lives at risk when they grab a garden hose and they try to wash down their rooftops. And that's just the one thing you don't ever want to see people do.
Absolutely not. And in this day and age, we're asking people to be proactive. And just today, I was watching the news, and someone on the news actually said that no one had actually come to their house to get them out, but the smoke from the fire had the smoke alarms come on. That's a great indication that you need to leave. You don't need someone to do that. So we ask everybody throughout the state to make sure if you even feel a little bit scared, you need to leave and leave soon.
It's not, when you say something is mandatory, Captain and Brenda, and you have to leave, the fact of the matter is they aren't forced to have to leave.
Yeah, the situation is never going to develop where you're going to actually see law enforcement coming in there and physically removing people, but we're trying to convey to the public the seriousness of the situation, and that is when you get those orders to leave, it's critical. If you take too long, you wait until the situation deteriorates to where the fire is actually in your yard and then you're forced to leave, creates a complicated situation for the firefighters because we're arriving there to set up and start utilizing the tactics we like to use to protect your property, and you are trying to get out of there at the same time. It can create collision hazards, very serious.
One of the things I want to talk about here is protecting your home, hardening your home, making it more fire resistant. And so let's talk a little bit about that, because brush clearance is a very important thing. And how do you deal with that right now?
Well, creating defensible space is critical. That's number one. And, we start early in the year. In the wildland-urban interface, we try to convey to people, we have laws about creating brush clearance and getting that defensible space out to 200 feet in high hazard areas so that you remove that flammable vegetation. The chances for embers to land in that vegetation and transmit to your house and endanger your home is greatly reduced if you can create that space, allow our fire apparatus to get in there, set up, and be able to defend the property.
Steve, you and I were talking earlier, and is it that Ventura County is doing something a little different? You've got a sort of a 5-foot extension now that you're asking people to do?
Yeah, so we've actually introduced a newer program that we're talking about defending your home from the inside out. And you start with your home and then you work your way out to that 100 feet. And so one of the things is that from your home, 5 feet out, you have an actual defensible space that doesn't have any vegetation or wood chips whatsoever.
That wood chips thing, and I want to talk about that for a second. A lot of people use decorative wood chips. They put them in the areas of planters and so forth around their windows, for instance, and bam, an ember comes and there you go. That's a problem, right?
Absolutely is a problem. And just with a single pane window, one of the areas that fail on a fire is actually the window itself, and it can break and the embers can get inside your house, obviously starting a fire. So now you've additionally have fuel right at the window. You can imagine that increases your chances of that actual window failing.
So I like this idea of protecting yourself from the inside of your home out, and that's what we're going to get to next. Still ahead, we'll look at some specific ways to harden your home against wildfires, and we'll take a look at a fire department video that shows you how to make a very detailed assessment of your home. That's coming up. The LA County Fire Department has some important tips on how to harden your home against a wildfire, including a video hosted by one of our guests today, Fire Captain Tony and Brenda.
From the construction materials you use to how much maintenance you do, it all depends on the choices you make. Here's how you can make your home as fire resistant as possible.
Let's start with the roof. This is considered the most vulnerable part of your home. Use ember-resistant materials, clean out rain gutters regularly, and cut tree branches within 10 feet of your roof and home. Consider enclosing rain gutters.
The video covers everything you can do to fireproof your home, from the best windows to walls to backyard decks. You can find this and other helpful videos at the LA County Fire Department website. We're back now with our fire captains, plus another guest, Scott Harris, the Chief Operating Officer of Building Construction Group, and he has a lot of knowledge about hardening homes and other buildings against wildfires. And I want to start with Scott and just ask you, now that we've seen a little bit of this video that the LA County Fire Department put out, what do you think about some of that? And I know that one of the things that you think is important is if you were going to redo your home, to do it with certain materials and to use metal framing instead of wood framing, because wood burns, right?
But there's a lot of great things that you can do to a home that for the people that own them already, right? You can do things like there's fire preventative paint. There's things like changing your windows. One of the most vulnerable points, Hal, in a home is actually, as you guys probably know, is the windows and doors, the glass. Once a glass heats up to about 300 degrees, it snaps. And then, so things you can do if you can't afford to change out your windows and put dual glaze, which, by the way, doubles your time. You can do things like change out your window coverings, right? Putting plastic or putting, your plastic drapes on there. Worst thing you could do. So do things like not having, flame retardant drapes, things of that sort. You can also do things like great plantings around the house. By the way, at our house, what we do, we have aloe vera, we've got blue agave, we've got rose bushes. I mean, I hope you guys like those, but those are all fire retardant.
Well, I think that's very important. The landscaping that you use could save your home.
Yeah.
And so I think that's critically important. Now, you had sent me about, I think 100 tips. Right. Yeah. And I don't know that we're going to go for 100 tips right now, but we do have a few of your tips that I did want to kind of share here, like a water pump for the pool, because that way you can kind of suck out the water and use it if you need it, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the ideas. I talked to these great gentlemen before, you know, they said don't be your own firefighter. So I think that's important. But, you know, what you can do is we use these submersible pumps. You can get it on any store.
Sump pumps.
And they come with a hose. You know, it's a great water source.
But also some of these other things, too. I mean, fire retardant foam, fire-resistant paint. You mentioned that. Yeah. Eliminate plastics, roof sprinkler system, install drywall, attic material, things like that.
So one of the best things I think you can do out of all of those is you're going to, and this is affordable, is the attic is probably one of the biggest places where you're going to got, you know, the fire's going to go up, right? It goes to the attic vents. So what you can do, go up into your attic, pop your head in there. If you see a lot of daylight in there, you want to start to close up some of those holes. Usually it's ventilation, things like your little turbine vents that are up on the roof. You know, they're great for what they are, but not good during fire season. So take a piece of drywall. If you can't afford to move it, put it up there. You can also, next level is actually to make the attic, you know, habitable space by just putting drywall. So how drywall, well, here's what's interesting. When drywall gets fired, you know what happens to it?
What happens to it?
It actually releases water. And so drywall, one layer of drywall that's that thick, 5/8 thick, will give you a 1 hour fire resistance. So basically, if you've got fire on the other side, so fire on the other side, you've got 1 hour. That's a lot. You add 2 layers, I've got 2 hours. That's huge.
Now Captain Kaufman, you have something that actually he just referred to, and show that to us so we understand what that is.
All of our houses have dormer vents or attic vents, and so what we recommend is, if you can see on this, the smallest screen, which is 1/8 of an inch, is going to give you your best protection. I'll turn it over so you can see anything bigger than that. That is the size of ember that's going to go into your house if you have anything bigger than the 1/8 of an inch. So we recommend the 1/8 of an inch screen on any vent that faces outside of your house.
Captain and Brenda, in that video, and by the way, camera likes you. If this fire department thing doesn't work out, you might consider television.
You do the calendars too.
Yeah, but let me ask you, I mean, what are a couple of the high points in that video? I think it's about a 4-minute video, so we can't watch the whole thing right now. But
well, talking about attics and vent spaces, that's key. Your foundation vents and screening those off with that 1/8 inch mesh is critical. People don't realize, especially during high pressure Santa Ana wind events, you're talking about a high pressure weather system. A lot of times when those wind events are coming into an area, the negative pressure, there's actually lower pressure inside the attic and trapped inside your crawl space that is trapped in there, and the attic and the foundation acts as like a vacuum for embers. So if you don't screen, those embers will take hold inside your attic readily, and they will get established, and you'll start seeing fire spread. And even in a normal structure fire, when we get an attic fire, a fire that's established inside of a confined space like that, it's a difficult process for us to put it out. It's not a quick operation. We've got to get in there, we've got to pull ceiling, we've got to be able to get hose lines to that fire. So it's more of a difficult fire problem for us, and it slows us down. And in that wildland fire environment, it's very up-tempo, and we're moving quickly. And when fires are getting established inside of confined spaces, it
sometimes these fires move faster than you can. We're going to pick it up with Captain Spellman in just a minute, but still ahead, we'll look at how a local utility is working to prevent more fires, and we'll take a look at one of the live fire cameras that are all over Southern California, helping firefighters spot smoke before a fire has a chance to spread. After this past year's devastating wildfires, Southern California Edison is taking some drastic action to prevent future wildfire tragedies. I met up with the utility's new fire meteorologist, who's working on ways to predict wildfires before they happen. We're right at the base of Mount Baldy right now.
Yeah, basically.
Tom Rolinski is the new guy at Southern California Edison. Well, relatively new. 10 months ago, he was hired to be the company's fire meteorologist. And that makes sense, given that our fire seasons seem to be getting longer and more difficult. Fires like the Thomas Fire, Woolsey, and others have been huge challenges for firefighters and utility companies. According to CAL FIRE statewide, about half of the acreage that burned in the last year we have data for, 2015, was due to utility company power equipment. That's put pressure on the companies.
We focus a lot on the weather conditions, how windy it is, how dry it is, particularly when we get into a Santa Ana wind event.
Recent rains added growth to the chaparral, which in some cases is already drying out. This is the stuff you worry about.
This is basically all the grass that popped up this spring and is now cured. It's now dried out and it's ready to burn.
He says it's really important to understand the moisture levels.
Here, we weigh it, we dry it in an oven for about 20 hours, and then we weigh it again to determine how much moisture is in this plant.
And then there's this, a higher tech weather station. There are about 200 of these scattered around potentially dangerous hillsides, sending back data constantly to a command center for analyzing. Rolinski says they should be able to warn communities as much as 3 days in advance before a fire danger exists. The notion of being able to anticipate what the winds have done, what the temperature's doing, the humidity level, and being able to say, this is what we think is going to happen with this fire. We haven't been able to do that before?
We have, but not in the level of detail that we're able to see right now. Again, we're installing all these weather stations across our service territory. We've never had this amount of data that's coming into our system.
What's really new is that because of all of this, they can now hone in on fine details about the conditions and get a sense of what might happen with a wildfire. Again, there are about 200 of those weather stations in the hillsides above communities like this one, Claremont. There's also about 100 high-definition cameras that have been installed all over Southern California by Southern California Edison. And not only will the utility be able to see those, firefighters will be able to see that, and so will you and I. And we'll show you on our website, foxla.com, exactly how you'll be able to do that. And here's what you can see on those cameras. You can find them at alertwildfire.org. That link is also on our website, foxla.com. This is Sunset Peak in the San Bernardino Mountains. There are more than 100 cameras, as we said. You can click on them, see them in your neighborhood, see some beautiful vistas, actually, like this right here. But you never know what you're going to end up seeing. And, you know, I can't think of anything, Captain Spellman, more disconcerting than if I were to go take a nice look at that beautiful landscape and all of a sudden see a fire coming at me. These cameras are helpful. I know that you'll be able to use them, and we will be able to use them as well.
Well, these are all really good things that the utility companies are starting to do. This is going to allow them to shut off their grid in certain areas. We are doing, obviously, things that we do specific for firefighting that are a little bit different, but obviously the cameras out there are going to help everybody in the community.
Well, yeah, and I've got to believe, Captain and Brenda, I've got to believe, you know, there have been fires started by power companies, and so this has got to be a way to be able to kind of turn the corner on this and say, look, we're trying to be good citizens, right?
Well, observing the landscape and seeing a start early is critical because we're able to get our aircraft on that fire early and we're able to stop that fire before it rapidly spreads and gets large to the extent that, you know, we've got these multi-day campaign fires. So that's a big part of tactics and strategy that we're utilizing by pre-positioning resources in high fire areas and getting a lot of apparatus aircraft on the fire early so we don't see that really rapid rate of spread. The fire gets giant in very short order and then we have a big fire problem on our hands.
Let me ask Captain Kaufman. I mean, I'm just interested in the fact they even put 100 cameras out there. Why haven't we done that before? Cameras are so easy and cheap anymore, and you could have cameras all over the place looking into the hillsides for fires.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I know certain jurisdictions have had cameras that are available to our...
What about Ventura County?
To our government agencies, and we do have cameras around the county, and that holds true around the state of California.
And so, you know, when we look at what they're doing and trying to get a handle on the weather situation, you have specific people in your departments that do that very thing, don't you?
Absolutely, and we partner out of our Southern Operations, which is in the Riverside area, with a meteorologist from the U.S. Forest Service. We meet every single day. They put out weather reports, and that goes out throughout, and that also happens in the Northern Operation area. So we have weather constantly being monitored to make sure we're ready for anything that comes.
Use the word ready. That's an important word in your lingo, right?
Absolutely.
Ready, set, go.
Ready, Set, Go is a big program, and it's kind of nice that we're doing this about hardening the home. We have a CAL FIRE app, and on that, you can actually go to the ready portion, and it takes you to a checklist on all the things you can do to your property and your home to be prepared to harden it.
Well, we'll put that on our Facebook page, too, so people will have access to that. What do you say to that, Captain? You have that sort of thing on your website as well?
We do, and so what we encourage people in Ventura County to do is to, before there's a disaster, is to go to VC Alert and actually register their cell phone with VC Alert, and then if there is a disaster and we need to notify people to evacuate, that's the way we do it.
Now, this is sort of that reverse 911 sort of thing, right, where
Correct.
You're getting calls in your homes, and I know you do that too, right?
Yes, we do, and we also encourage people to monitor those traditional media sources, have that AM radio. I know a lot of people during the Woolsey fire, you know, their cell phones failed. The towers fall, we start losing power. So having that battery-powered AM radio is a critical item to have as well. And we encourage people to keep those in their emergency kit. They can turn that radio on, and even if we're in a location where we still have internet access, we put out the tweets. Our Twitter account at LACOFDPIO gives LA County Fires incident information. People can monitor their AM radio, and those tweets that we put out over the internet, the news media picks up and puts it out over AM radio, and we can still get evacuation orders to people that have lost power and lost cell service.
You know, one of the most important things, I just want to say this real quick, we're talking about power, is when these fires happen and they generate their own wind and everything else, power lines come down, and all of a sudden you got power lines all over the streets, and you've got to be very, very careful about that. We'll be back with a look at some podcasts we think you'll like right after this, and some final thoughts from our fire captains. We have two podcasts for you. What the Hell is the name of it? And this week, one of them is the first band to play at Woodstock Sweetwater, and the other, a look at our KTTV 70 project, in which we're going back and looking at old stories, producing specials with many of those stories, and on a mission to take that old film and turn it into today's digital media. Available on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. Want to get some final thoughts from our guests. Let's start with Captain and Brenda, and hardening the home. You've got a video and you have some thoughts.
Yeah, we see it as one of the most critical items to protecting your home during a wildfire, because the big threat is you've got ember cast, embers are flying out in front of the fire. You can look at photographs, there are many out there that show a wildland fire approaching a neighborhood, and the most flammable item in the fire environment is actually the homes themselves. And you will see homes on fire, but all the vegetation is not burning. That's a clear sign that having fire-resistant roofing material, cleaning off dead debris around your rain gutters and the tops of your roof, boxing in your eaves, screening your foundation vents and attics, that's what's going to protect your home from allowing embers from getting established and burning that home down.
Captain Kaufman?
You know, we have people's attention right now, and I think it's important. Number one, find out what the alerting system is in your area. Make sure you sign up for it. And then, like we talk about in our community emergency response team classes, have a go bag, have a preparation, and have a plan. So when there is a disaster, you can follow our Ready, Set, Go and escape.
Yeah, you grab it and run. Captain Spellman.
Just everyone to be prepared, and what I like to say to everybody, are you ready? Because we are.
And we only have a few seconds.
And I want to encourage everyone to do some of the smaller things, but you can also do things like there's fire-resistant materials like this, which this is made out of cement. Mm-hmm. Look at that. You guys like this, right? Doesn't burn. So if you can do the bigger things, start off with the smaller things. Every penny you spend is a penny that goes back into saving lives. It's important to harden your home and be ready for any fire that might come your way. And that's it for this week. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.